Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, what is the pending order?
There's no pending order. There's been no unanimous consent. The senator's recognized.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak in opposition to the Omnibus Appropriations bill that is before us. I think this debate has been good. We have had amendments, and I thank the majority leader for allowing amendments to be offered. I would note that not one amendment has passed, but nevertheless, we have had the debate. And I think the American people deserve to know more about this bill and why there are so many objections to it. And I'm speaking against it today because of the sheer size. It's a $408 billion bill. But when you account for the previous bills that have already passed appropriations for this fiscal year for defense, military construction and veterans affairs, and homeland security, the bottom line is, for fiscal year 2009, we're going to spend $1 trillion. Passage of this bill will mark the first time in United States history that our regular appropriations process, just funding government in the routine and regular order, will surpass $1 trillion. Last week, I offered an amendment. Actually, Senator McCain offered an amendment. Senator Coburn has offered several amendments. Senator DeMint, Senator Vitter, Senator Kyle. So many amendments have been offered. But it was basically different ways to bring down the cost of this bill to some kind of responsible, agreed upon area that we can say we're doing the people's bidding by taking care of taxpayer dollars. That's what we tried to do. First, Senator McCain offered an amendment to say, let's just do a continuing resolution that funds government at 08 levels until October 1, the end of the fiscal year. Next, an amendment was offered by Senator Ensign that basically said 08 spending levels, but with the new bill, with the new authorizations. It will have all of the congressional imprint, but it will be 08 levels. That failed. My amendment was 08 levels with the rate of inflation. So instead of an 8% increase in spending in a one-year period, double the rate of inflation, it would have been a 3.8% increase from 08, which I thought was quite reasonable. And furthermore, I said, let's decide that we will only take it from the accounts in the bill before us that duplicate what we just passed in the stimulus bill weeks ago. So that we would say to the American people, we are going to fund government at 08 levels plus the rate of inflation, and the way we're going to cut it back is to let the Appropriations Committee decide which of the duplicated accounts that were just passed in the stimulus bill 2 weeks ago would be taken out of either the stimulus bill or the bill before us. That was my amendment, and it too failed. Now, Mr. President, we've tried everything that we know to do in a reasonable and responsible way to just say to the American people, everyone is hurting right now. And we should not be spending in the regular order on regular government business 8% above last year's rate. My amendment would have been a 1% cut from this bill, and the Appropriations Committee could have chosen where that went. I also suggested that we take it out of the duplicate measures that we've passed within 1 month of each other. The American people expect more responsible actions from Congress than spending without restraint. You know, Mr. President, I hear from my constituents all the time, and a lot of common sense is coming out of my constituents. I just wish that we could export the good old Texas common sense to the United States Congress, because what they're saying is, why don't we look at the big picture here? Instead of spending a $1 trillion stimulus spending package on top of $1 trillion to fund government for the next 9 months, and furthermore, we haven't even dealt with the financial institutions yet, why don't we step back? Why don't we step back and look at the problem we have, which is our financial institutions aren't working, our small businesses are not getting credit, so they're not able to borrow to stay in business, and the housing market is in the tank. We haven't addressed those issues yet. And here we are, spending as if there's no restraint, adding to the debt because we don't have the money in the bank. I cannot think of anything more irresponsible than what we're doing in these last couple of months in the United States Congress. Actually, the stimulus packages from last year were also erroneous, but couldn't we have learned from the mistakes? Couldn't we have learned from what didn't work in the first stimulus package? But no, we don't seem to have learned, even though it was less than 6 months ago. So I think the American people are showing the concern they have because the stock market is low, among the lowest days that we've had in 30 or 40 years, and people don't seem to be getting stabilized here. So now we have, coming on the heels of this Omnibus bill, which we are not accounting for, a $3.6 trillion budget proposed by the president, with a deficit for 2010 projected at $1.75 trillion. Now, the cumulative debt of America today is $10.6 trillion. The proposed budget plan recently suggests a doubling of this debt over the long term. Mr. President, 25% of the national debt that we have, that we are accumulating, is owned by foreigners. The Chinese government owns almost $700 billion in debt, our debt. This is the same Chinese government that just this weekend took a rather hostile action toward one of our naval vessels in the South China Sea. I think we should be looking at the national security implications of having so much of our country's debt in the hands of any foreign country or any foreign national. In addition to the concerns about whether the borrowers are going to buy our debt, what if they say 10 trillion, 11 trillion? You know, maybe we'll buy your debt, but the risk is too great, and we'll just have to jack up the interest rate. Now, Mr. President, what is that going to do to an economy that is teetering so badly? I don't think we can turn a blind eye to the long-term consequences of this debt burden. It is not only irresponsible, but it borders on being reckless, Mr. President. When are we going to stop it? If not today, when we can, then when? We have a chance today to say to the American people, we'll go back to the drawing boards and we will put reasonable limits on the amount of debt that we are accumulating. We will put limits on the deficits that are being created. I think we should go back to 2008 levels because we just passed a $1 trillion spending plan. Why not go back to 2008 levels and take out just the duplication from the stimulus bill and what's in the bill before us today? That would be a responsible action that might start giving confidence to the American people that the Congress and the President will be able to work together in a bipartisan way to act responsibly with a big picture in mind. And Mr. President, I urge the President of the United States not to go forward with the budget that he has put forward. not to go forward with an energy plan that is going to start increasing taxes on every electric bill that every consumer in this country will have, but instead to step back and say, let's fix the financial industries. Let's fix the financial institutions. The idea that has just been propounded that the FDIC, or one of the, I guess it is the FDIC, excuse me if I'm wrong, one of the regulatory agencies is going to start putting a surcharge on every bank deposit as a tax to pay for these other schemes that have no impact whatsoever. So you're going to tax the small banks while you prop up the big banks? Mr. President, there are a lot of things coming out of here that just don't make sense. And I think it's time for us to begin to show the American people that we're going to step back, we're going to fix the financial markets so that people can get debt, so that people can borrow to make payroll and to keep people working, so that people can stay in their homes and they won't be foreclosed out, and shore up the housing industry so that we can help them start having the ability to build and sell homes again. And Mr. President, if we can start there, then we will know what kind of stimulus we need or what kind of further spending would be in the best interest of this country to get our economy going again. But until then, Mr. President, we should not pass the bill before us today. We should go back to the drawing boards and begin responsible bipartisan leadership from Congress and the President on behalf of the American people. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.